He's like, oh, we've been investigating you for 3 or 4 months now. We know exactly what's going on. I'm like, oh, that's not me. I don't know what you're talking about. Hung up the phone. Street racing for me came on pretty early. I was in the Miami scene. It was crazy when Fast and the Furious came out. And when I saw that movie, I was like, wow, that is really what we were doing in Miami. Like, pretty accurate of what was happening. I mean, obviously a lot of drama in Fast and the Furious, but when I watched that back, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Because I would basically take that Mazda RX-7 and we would go to these crazy places in Miami after dark. And I would have to bring a friend of mine because I don't speak Spanish. So I really needed a translator down there. So I met a friend at a gas station who just liked cars. And he's like, let's go down Miami. And I go, you're going to help me out and communicate? He's like, yeah, we got this. So I'd be down there with my Mazda RX-7. And it was these back alleys behind warehouses, street racing. It was just a crazy, cool experience. One time the Viper came out and everyone's like, the Viper's gonna come out and race you. And I beat the Viper in the Mazda RX-7 and people were absolutely going nuts. He showed up 3 weeks later with nitrous. And then it was a whole different ballgame. I think he did beat me then. But that's where the kind of street racing thing was come about. It was down on like Chrome Avenue, after hours, pretty crazy scene out there. At one point, the police got involved and basically blockaded both sides of Chrome Avenue. So you couldn't get out. They had helicopters out there. We were out there till 3 a.m. I was one of the last persons to get basically the ticket. They didn't know who was doing what. They were basically writing on for like spectating a drag race. Police officer came up to me. He's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, he said he was crazy because, a lot of people didn't speak English. And he's like, you speak English? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, you can go. I was like, well, okay, fine. So I think he was tired of writing tickets. So I didn't, get arrested or get a ticket for that. But I think at that point I was like, this is probably done. I didn't really go down there anymore, I think I learned my lessons pretty quick and like, oh, what am I doing down there? We really weren't taking videos back then. It was before the whole street racing on YouTube thing. But as the channel kind of started growing, I wanted to do some comparisons. There were some spots that were kind of wide open and empty spaces that we would line up cars and just do some videos and stuff like that. Not necessarily saying that I was doing it, but there was street racing videos on the Drag Times channel. Not saying I was racing. A lot of my friends were out there, so I'm not really going to get into that. The videos got pretty big, and I think it built up a lot of traffic and views to where people were starting to take notice. People, used to be like 2 or 3 friends that would go out to this spot. Then it ended up being like 10 or 12 people. Then it was like 20 people. And then people started coming out there and I didn't even know who they were. So it got beyond of like a small group of people just kind of doing a couple polls and stuff to like, this big kind of thing that's happening. And at that point, I kind of looked around. I'm like, this is getting a little crazy, And at that point, I was getting this new 2017 Ford GT that I got approved for. And I'm like, well, I definitely can't bring this car out there because everyone's going to know whose car that is. So I said, I think this is probably the end of the street racing for the channel. And then I got a call from a news station. And they basically said, hey, Brooks, this is such and such news station. We want to talk about the Drag Times channel. And I said, oh, I asked him a couple questions, this news reporter, and I could tell he didn't know anything about cars. And I got a little suspicious, like why he would want to talk to me in the first place. So I asked him, I said, hey, you want to meet me at Palm Beach International Drag Strip where I do my drag racing videos and we can do an interview there. He's like, no, I want to talk about what you're doing on such and such road. And I said, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, oh, we've been investigating you for 3 or 4 months now. We know exactly what's going on. I'm like, oh, that's not me. I don't know what you're talking about. Hung up the phone, called an attorney, and basically got some legal advice. It basically just says, you don't talk. And so I didn't talk. Basically, they were following around the group of people over a very long period of time and watching what was happening. And there was like basically a secret investigation going on the whole time, which obviously no one knew about. So that story broke on my flight to SEMA. So I didn't even know the story hit, but it was pretty bad. They made me and my friends out to be some pretty bad people. And, I think the news likes to sensationalize things and make it bigger than it really was. They were saying I was the kingpin of drag racing of South Florida, and people flew in from all over the country to come race. oh, this is just definitely not true. You know, they said a lot of things, and it was a pretty damaging story. It was embarrassing. I was embarrassed. You know, I had a tech job at this very prestigious place, and I didn't want to mix the two up. So, you know, all my friends were texting me like, "You're on TV. You're on the news. They got the police involved. They're going to set up all these things and so forth." And sure enough, like they barricaded off the spot where people would meet up. You know, it wasn't just me. They barricaded up the spot, and, you know, I just never went out there again. But there was people who would still go out there. You know, every Sunday people go out there and do this still to this day. And they were setting up things to catch people for sure. But they definitely didn't come across me because I wasn't out there anymore. But funny story is a few years later, actually, during COVID, where you weren't allowed to kind of even drive. There was this weird thing where you couldn't be out if you weren't doing something specific. Well, a lot of us got bored and took a bunch of cars out. And I threw a fishing pole in the McLaren 720S. And if we got pulled over, I would say we're going fishing in the Everglades. So we did go back out on this road, which I said I wouldn't do. And sure enough, I got pulled over. And I was like, no freaking way. This just happened. Were we speeding? Maybe. Were we racing? Absolutely not. So I get pulled over. We pull into this, you know, stop off of this Everglades area. I just kind of get out of the car, and the police officer walks up and goes, "What you guys doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm fishing." Show him my fishing pole. He's like, "You're fishing in that car?" I'm like, "Yes, sir, we're fishing." He's like, "I know who you are." I'm like, "Oh, who am I?" He's like, "I know this McLaren, this orange McLaren. This is the famous 720S. I know who you are." He goes, "I just wanted to say hi." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay, fine." He goes, because basically, I'm not doing anything wrong because I didn't say you were. He goes, "I saw the car out here, and I know what this car used to do out here." And he just wanted to say hi. So it's kind of a interesting interaction from police that some are actually kind of fans of the channel, believe it or not. So I come from a long history of McLarens. I had the first MP4 12C when it first came out. That was an amazingly fast car that no one really knew how fast it was. I was kind of the ones who first took it to the drag strip and said, in the back of my mind, I'm like, this car's almost 700 horsepower. It's 3,000 pounds. This thing should be a monster. And people who had taken out really didn't get good times. That was a very fast car. And then I got like a 650S and a 650 Spider. Then the 720 came out. And I was actually at a Lamborghini dealership buying a Performante. And this is when the 720 just come out, 2018, I think. They're like, "We got one in Atlanta if you want it right now." And I'm like, "Show me some pictures." They sent me the pictures. I said, "Forget the Performante. I want that McLaren." Bought the McLaren, came in, did some testing at the drag strip and so forth, and this thing was insane. It took everyone by surprise. I think it ran like 9.7 at like 147 in the car. And for back then, 2018, that was the next level car that was just beating everything. It definitely got involved in the street racing. Everyone wanted a piece of that car. I mean, we were out there basically demolishing everything. It had this distinctive whistling weird sound to it they called the whistle of death. Whenever that whistle of death came on, you knew you were getting beat. It was really a highlight of just the next level of like lightweight, very powerful, well-designed cars. Great aero, very, very stable. And we had some pretty insane matchups from just muscle cars to like, they were like, I got called out and basically, you can't beat a street bike. So someone went out and raced some crazy BMW street bike, and it was a pretty insane race to see how fast that car, and you could keep the speed going, for a very long time. And I think that really put, McLaren in the world of like very, very fast cars. And then people started modifying them. I didn't modify my cars. And it comes up a lot, like, why don't I modify my cars? I think being in the public spotlight, you get your warranty voided real quick. McLaren always kind of had a problem with what I was doing because I incited people to modify their cars, which caused warranty claims with McLaren. So there's always this kind of weird balance of publicity from McLaren, which they loved, but warranty issues come in when people were making, 8,000, 9,000 horsepower. So instead of modifying my cars, I was actually driving other people's cars. So I did make the first pass in the 8s in a McLaren 720S. I was the first one to do that. We took multiple trips up to New Jersey to hit that record. First one to go like 8.7 in a 765 LT. My buddy Fred, Pet Fred on Instagram, let me borrow his car, which he had modified. We took it out to TX2K and set the record in that car. And then from there, they just kind of got faster and faster. But, back then during the street races, that McLaren was just destroying just about everything. Part of the whole drag times thing is to really compare cars on an even playing field. So I think my preference is to test a car when it's stock. because anyone can modify a car. You can make a Honda Civic go sixes, you know what I mean? So like when I'm comparing cars, I like them to be stock. So, the stock 720S is just a phenomenal car, and anything stock in those days, there's really nothing that could keep up with it. McLaren sometimes just claim like 0 to 60 in base quarter mile times. They probably will tell you the 720S runs like a 10.1 and goes 0 to 60 in like 2.9. I think I got 0 to 60 in 2.1 and ran 9.7 at 147 in the quarter mile on my 720S. And then I jumped into the 765 LT coupe from there. And even to this day, no one's beat the time, and it's still very competitive. I ran 931 at 151 miles an hour in a stock McLaren 765 coupe, which these days still holds up. I mean, the Revuelto can't beat that, right? I think the only car that's really come around is kind of the new 720S is the ZR1X. McLaren's, I'm pretty methodical about, number one, getting the right test date, because weather has a huge input on how the car is going to perform. So, making sure the weather is going to cooperate, making sure it's a private track rental. I don't go out there and test and tune. There's too much going on. I was so set on getting the best performance out of McLaren. Back then, you couldn't do burnouts. So I bought a set of tire warmers. And these are, that you put on race cars. I would bring it to the track. I would jack up the car and wrap these tire warmers around there and heat up the tires to like 200 some degrees. Because you can't do a burnout, but if you heat up the tires, it gives you a nice head start. So I would do that to get the best traction. There's a whole thing about staging the car. There's a lot of interesting in drag racing, getting the absolute best number, not necessarily heads-up racing, that help out. So like very shallow staging. With drag racing, you actually have a 1 foot head start, this 1 foot rollout. If you hit the beam and travel 1 foot forward, you're losing 1 foot of distance that you could have had if you started way back when. So I'll typically just barely trip the bulb enough to like barely stage the car. That gives you a little bit of a head start to get that launch out. And there's a lot of other things like in the McLaren. There's a little RPM bump off the line that if you sit on the line, and obviously this doesn't work for heads-up racing because the guy would beat you by the time you launch, but there's a little bump between 3 and 3,200. So if you just sit there and wait for the RPMs to bump up, that extra 200 RPM or 150 RPM will help you on the launch and get you a better quarter mile time. Your best gains on the quarter mile is that launch. Every tenth you pick up with the launch is worth 0.2 on the top end of what you're going to get. So I did spend a lot of time, obviously quarter tank of gas or less weight. I did swap out the seats in my 720S. I had electric seats, swapped them out for OEM manual seats. That saved, 70 pounds. So obviously weight has I'll take out all the tools out of the front, take out the car cover, make sure I didn't eat the night before, you know what I mean? Take it to the nth degree, because you want every 10th to get out and set that record. You got to go and take every benefit you can.
The Ticket Clinic just launched a brand new podcast, so click the bubble on your screen or the link in the description to subscribe now and get all of Mark Gold's great expertise. And of course, the Ticket Clinic is still here to fight a ticket no matter where you get one. So check them out now to thank them for their support of VINwiki and fight your ticket with the Ticket Clinic.